WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisCI to 44321.
Alicia Saunders of Kimberly is the Democratic candidate in the 2nd Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Alicia Saunders, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much for having me today.
May I ask you, why are you running for this office? What's your campaign's key message?
My campaign's key message is all about, my main motto is unity in action. Because I believe there's not a whole lot of uniting going on within our state. There's just too much division. I've seen so much of that in our legislature. And when I go and talk to people at doors, they're like, yeah, that's one of those issues that they're just sick and tired of. The fighting, they want our government to get along. They want to get along with their neighbors. I feel that that's what is one of those key issues.
So if you're elected, what's an example of a bill, a piece of legislation that would be a priority for you?
For me, honestly, it's not exactly a priority for me. It seems to be a priority to the people in the 2nd Assembly District with the issue of funding our schools. There are 3 school districts within the 2nd Assembly District that have referendums on the November ballot. And talking to people at the doors, they feel that this is not necessary, that these things should be taken care of at the state level versus having that burden put on the local communities where they have to worry about, paying my property taxes, or do I need to go get groceries? This is an issue that people worry about, but they want their kids to go to a safe school. And they want their kids to have a good education. And I don't think the people in our communities should have to worry about this.
So if you're elected, you're entering the legislature during a biennial budget year. The state's projected to have more than a $4 billion surplus. What would be your top 2 priorities for use of that surplus funding?
One of my top priorities would be to look at getting our roads back to a baseline. I've had people at doors tell me how torn up the roads are. The majority of the 2nd Assembly District is a rural district. There's a lot of farming communities, and the people have talked about how, this farm equipment's heavy, and these roads aren't made for the farm equipment to drive on them. And I would like to get our roads to a baseline where we can have our rural roads made for farm equipment to drive on them regularly.
Do you have a second funding priority?
Looking at getting our schools to a baseline as well. Getting them up to snuff with, repairs that they've been pushing off and pushing off and pushing off. And just getting things like that to a baseline.
Are tax cuts or tax reform at all a part of your platform?
We do need tax reform. The middle class holds the majority of the weight of our taxes in the state, and I don't think it's right. And I do think that the middle class deserves a tax cut. But that's definitely something that we would have to talk to other legislators and say, hey, is it really fair for our constituents to be paying all of this all on their own in the middle class?
You mentioned K-12 education as a priority for you. I'm wondering what you think is working well in education and what are some things that need to change? As
a parent of 2 kids who graduated from the Kimberly High School, a lot of what I know is, local. And Kimberly did an amazing job with our special ed program. But that's not quite the same all across, because a lot of schools are having to dip into their general education fund for the special education programs because it's federally mandated, so they are required to have these programs.
You support an increase in special education reimbursement?
Yes. I support actually properly funding that versus continuing to reduce it over and over and over again.
What about the state's higher education system, a system of 4 and 2-year colleges and technical colleges? What does the future of that system look like to you, and where do you think the legislature should focus?
Actually funding our colleges, our 2-year and 4-year schools, because over the last about 10 to 12 years, they have been continuing to decrease the funding to our colleges, and that in turn caused an increase to tuition. And this I believe has caused a decrease in enrollment in the 2-year schools, which has caused even my own school at UW Fox Valley, which I believe now is UW Oshkosh Extension, that's closing down this next year. And
you want to keep the 2-year colleges open?
They're a great resource. It helped me just get started into school, and it helps students get started if they haven't figured out what their major is. They can just get started on that bachelor's and not have to worry about moving into dorms.
So you support full funding of the universities of Wisconsin system?
I do.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it?
I'm not totally sure on a specific challenge. I think there are a lot of small issues that have turned it into a big issue.
What's an example of that?
Not giving enough support to our unions, because our unions are a great source of training for new employees. I think that we need to be encouraging more of this training in high schools. We've got high schools that do like tech ed training and early childhood training and programs where they're looking to be teachers. I think we need to encourage this a lot in high schools so that these kids are able to discover what exactly they're going to fit into and what they're going to love doing once they go out into the workforce.
I have a few more workforce questions for you.
Yeah.
Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Absolutely, because our state government, WisconsinItes, are our number one priority. Not people from Minnesota, not people from Illinois or any other state in this country. Wisconsinites are our number one priority. And if we can't find somebody that's certified for that particular job in Wisconsin, then we can branch out.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
I am aware of this issue. I've seen it in other portions of our state and our workforce as well. And I believe we need to bring these other companies up to snuff and make them compliant. Not necessarily make them, but require them to be compliant and kind of put a little bit of more pressure on them on making sure that they are actually doing what's right and following the laws, just like these other companies are doing their best to.
Transitioning to housing. Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses housing for affordability? Is it rent control or building more rentals or some other solution?
I think we need to look into landlords. There are plenty of landlords that are amazing landlords out there that, they're doing their best to make sure that their rentals are affordable for their residents, and they do their best to make sure that the homes are repaired and taken care of. But there's other landlords who are not really, all they care about is that little bit of extra income, and which it's fair because we're all suffering here with low income. But I think we do need to talk about dealing with the issue of the increase in rental pricing, because it's not fair to renters. So I don't necessarily have a total answer and complete solution for that. All I know really basically is the renter's end of it, because I used to rent.
Mm-hmm. What about healthcare? Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures? Well, number one, I would put some pressure to release the money that we already had set aside for the Chippewa Valley, for those hospitals, and I would put pressure to release that out to the Chippewa Valley, because it is greatly needed right now. There were so many jobs lost with those hospitals closing. So many people had to work their butts off to try and find new health care, new doctors, new providers. And health care should be one of those top priorities, because, again, the government's job is to take care of Wisconsinites. And Wisconsinites are human beings, and healthcare is important when we're talking about human beings. Do you support increasing the Medicaid reimbursement rate to hospitals?
I do, yes. I definitely support expanding Medicaid. It is one of those needed things. I mean, we're one of, 10 states that has not expanded that, and it is shown that the majority of Wisconsinites do want Medicaid to be expanded here.
What about mental health care? Growing concern for Wisconsinites, a concern for state and county budgets. What are you hearing on this issue, and what are some solutions?
It's a really big issue, because it seems to be a neglected issue, very, very, very much so. And there's such a stigma with mental health. Manitowoc County itself this year was looking at a budget shortfall in their social services department. And we need to look at how are we going to make sure that these budgets are taken care of, so that we can encourage more people to come in, more mental health care providers to come in and help take care of our people. And one of those solutions I see is increasing our shared revenue, because our shared revenue has not, it did increase a little bit this year, but from what I am being told by people in the villages and the towns, this was not nearly enough to help take care of all the shortfalls that they've had.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion?
I am a large supporter of your choice. I support reproductive freedom, because it's not up to the government, and it's not up to any other voter whether I make a decision in the doctor's office or any other Wisconsinite makes a decision in the doctor's office.
Should there be any number of weeks as a limit?
No, because that's an arbitrary number, because you never know what's going to happen. There could be an issue later in the pregnancy where the development stops, or a medical issue happens, and the idea is the mother might die or the child might die. we should not be putting a week's restriction on the doctors, because then we look at it and then you have issues where an infection could develop. And
You mentioned roads as a priority. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed and for the state to keep on schedule with reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
The roads are in dire need of repair. Yes, we've got roads in the Second Assembly District that are being repaired. They've benefited from the Infrastructure Act, but that's not going to be enough to take care of all of these roads in the state of Wisconsin that need help. I mean, even me driving from Kimberly all the way out to Two Creeks, you come across so many roads where it's just like, it's rough riding. There's huge turns. The roads need to be repaired. We need to be able to, our residents need to be able to go from point A to point B and be confident that the road isn't going to fall apart underneath them.
PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
It is an extremely important issue. PFAS is very dangerous. It causes cancers, and I mean, it's not necessarily within the Second Assembly District, but it is an issue that faces our state, because I mean, we've got Marinette County up there in Marinette, which is the third largest PFAS contamination in the country. And even just that, they've got crops and cattle, and that contamination can get into the groundwater, and it gets into the cattle, it gets into the crops, and those crops get sold. And
what should the state do about it? What are the solutions around
well,
PFAS?
we currently have money set aside for taking care of this, but it's sitting tied up in our Joint Finance Committee. So we need to release that funding, and we need to make sure that funding gets released ASAP so that the DNR can go and do these inspections and these tests, and so that we can get ourselves on the road to cleaning this up.
We're down to our final two questions. How would you describe the leading difference between you and your opponent?
That is a question that it's a pretty good question. So for me, I've been told that I wear my heart and my values on my sleeve, and this is 100% true. What you see of me at events, at doors, is the same exact person that I present online. I will show my true face to anybody and everybody any time of the day, because I feel that is essential to our society, is, being true and truthful and showing integrity to the people.
Final question. Let's say you're elected this fall and you get a magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings all people and parties together. What is the issue?
The issue, I would say, is divisiveness. I would say if I had a magic wand, it would be to get people to actually talk and learn to compromise instead of wanting their way all the time.
Well, thank you, Alicia Saunders of Kimberly, the Democratic candidate in the 2nd Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Alicia Saunders, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.